Welcome to the latest episode of the Pitchside podcast. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. Welcome in the episode and join us for more. You're welcome. And we kick off this episode, of course, by talking about the African Cup of Nations semi-final. It was Cameroon versus Egypt yesterday, and congratulations to Egypt as they join Senegal in the final. It will be Mane versus Salah in the final of the African Cup of Nations. They will contend for that trophy. It was a marathonic game. It was a long game. It was a very long night for Egypt. It was another exhausting night for them because they went through the ringer already in the quarters and in the round of 16. They played the extra time in both cases. They played the penalties against Ivory Coast. They played the penalties against Cameroon. And, you know, there was the worry, obviously, before the game and even during the game, understandably, that they will be tired and exhausted. And to be honest, they were. But it makes it makes me think that Cameroon were not on their level anyway. Speaking of Cameroon, of course, they were not on their best level possible in this game. Now, frankly, there was a lot of factors they're going to talk about. First of all, Cameroon, I think, were predictable in this game. It was easier to Egypt to kind of defend anyway. I mean, they were a bit nervous in the start. They were a bit unable to control the game, even to string some passes together at certain points. You know, they were very, very deep, and I mean very, very deep. They were like their striker Mustafa Mohamed was defending in the 18 yards box, kind of deep for Egypt. The start was really, really bad, as I mentioned. Couldn't string some passes together. Cameroon were pinning them basically to their defense, not by actually having intense pressure, but I think Egypt's choice was, let's just stay there and try to absorb the intention, absorb the intensity and the enthusiasm about Cameroon in the start of this game, and then try to grow into this game a bit by bit. And they did that. After half an hour or so, they started to grow into this game. They started stringing some passes, making some moves, trying to create opportunities. Didn't exactly create a lot, but they tried. In the second half, things were a bit less, I would say, not more of the same, because Egypt started to go more forward, but they missed, I think, not big chances that could have, changed the game, but I think opportunities where they should have made better decisions. Obviously, Salah's ball late in the game, of course, when the back pass was bad from the Cameroonian defence, and he should have taken advantage of it, but I think he was a little bit worried of a rash challenge from Andre Onana, so he pulled back a little, thus missing a chance on Egypt anyway. So the second half was more of Egypt trying to be calm and collected on the ball at the very least, not exactly threatening forward. I mean, Cameroon were not either in the second half, because aside, I think, from the ball that hit the crossbar from N'Gadu early in the first half, there wasn't really like much of a danger from Cameroon. Like, they were getting the ball, they were getting to the final third, but no end product, no big chances created, no big moments of threat from Cameroon. So I think once this game extended to extra time, you knew that Egypt are going to try and grind out to penalties, because they were running on fumes by then. They were easily and visibly, I would say, tired, visibly exhausted. Players couldn't run. The substitutions that were made, were made more to just keep the players fresh, or keep the field fresh with players. And speaking of the field, just a point before I get to the penalties and all of that. I mean, the pitch was so bad. For a semi-final of an African Cup of Nations that is played, with the whole world watching, that pitch was horrible. I mean, I can't count how many times the players from both sides slipped. The coach slipped, Carlos Queiroz from Egypt. The assistant referee slipped once or twice during running in that game. So the pitch was so bad, and that just adds up to the sort of the portfolio of badness about this tournament. I mean, the stadiums, the hotels, the COVID stuff, and all of that. It's definitely an addition to forget in terms of organisation, in terms of logistic-wise. I think this should be forgotten very quickly, and hopefully Ivory Coast's editions next year is better. So as I mentioned before, the extra time, once we got there, I think we knew that mostly we're going to get to penalties, because Cameroon, I think, accepted the fact that they will not be breaking down Egypt, and they didn't have creativity aside from just playing crosses into Vincent Aboubakar, who was neutralized in a big way today by the defenders of Egypt. Very much kudos to them for defending really well against a dangerous player like him, top scorer of the tournament, of course. Which, I mean, it's not surprising. Cameroon, when met their first test, their first real test in the tournament, they go out. When they don't score, they go out. And I think another problem is that it seems like nobody knows how to shoot a penalty in Cameroon, because aside from Vincent Aboubakar, who scored 2 in the tournament and is pretty experienced, the other 3 missed their penalties. 2 were saved by Abu Gabel, brilliant, of course, goalkeeping from him, and Clinton G missed the final one to send Cameroon packing out of this tournament. It's a bad result, obviously, for Cameroon, who had high hopes, but Egypt deserve it, and their path throughout this tournament, I mean, the knockouts in particular, this is just a miraculous story. First of all, they're overachievers in a way, because before the tournament, there were loads of criticism to the coach, low expectations. Even Egyptian fans were not that optimistic about their side getting anywhere near semi-final or a final. They were pretty convinced that they won't get there. In the end, they found themselves there, and in a pretty emphatic way, getting past, Ivory Coast in the round of 16, past Morocco in the quarter, past Cameroon hosts with all the war statements from Samuel Eto'o and all of that, and trying to play mind games and psychological warfare with the Egyptian side. And now they're going to get to the final against Senegal, I think, without any pressure, because Egypt, I think, even if they lose this final, I would say they would have 7 other trophies to fall on, and they would have a lot of support from the Egyptian fans. The belief is now, I think, in Egypt is that they got to where they should be, like normally as Egypt, according to the standards in the past. They got to a point that they didn't think they would get to, according to how they're playing now or how they were looking early on in the tournament. But definitely, they will be. I think the Egyptian fans will be happy either way if they won or lost the title in the final, of course, which is going to lead us nicely to talking about that final in just a second. Congratulations, of course, to Egypt. So obviously on Sunday it will be the third place match for the in the African Cup of Nations, but of course most importantly is going to be the final. It's Egypt versus Senegal. It is Salah versus Mane. The Liverpool teammates are going to battle it out not just as the AFCON final, but also as a preview for the World Cup qualifiers playoffs that they're going to be playing in March between the two sides as well. This is going to be a great trilogy of matches. I would think very, very must-watch, I would say, kind of match for Egypt here against Senegal. Obviously, the first factor that I would talk about straight off the bat is if the physical condition of Egyptian players will play a factor. I mean, it will play a factor in a certain way. I'm not going to say because Senegal are much fresher, because that's clear, I think, for everybody to see. They didn't play 3 extra times like Egypt did. They basically Egypt played an extra match. They basically played 8 matches in this tournament, considering the final that they will play. They basically will play 8 matches by the time the tournament ends, with 3 extra times and penalties and all of that. And not just that, I mean, the problems around the Egyptian squad of injuries, not COVID necessarily, they got away with that, and they didn't really have a COVID outbreak like other sides did. But they had a lot of injuries. They basically lost all of their defense at a certain point of the tournament. Only the left back, Fatou, is the one that stayed from the main defense that started the tournament. The right back changed, the 2 centre-halves changed, and it didn't really affect Egypt because they had so much collective spirit. But I think it was a big blow, losing so many players, losing also their main goalkeeper, Mohamed El-Shenawi. Definitely was a big blow, but I think Abu Gabel replaced him in the best way possible. Overachievers, according to me, in my opinion, they're overachievers. They simply reached a point that should have been, not in their dreams or not in their thinking early on in the tournament, particularly when they lost against Nigeria. The hopes were, you know what, we'll get to the round of 16, all the quarters, and then we get eliminated. It's fine, we can accept it. But now they got to the final. Maybe it will hurt more if they get out of the final and they lose it here, but I don't think it will do that much. Like, it won't hurt Egypt to lose this final as much as it will hurt Senegal to lose that final, considering that Senegal, this is their 4th final of the African Cup of Nations. They've been 3 times there before, 92, 2002, and 2019. They lost all 3, of course, in 92 and 2002. They lost on penalties in both cases, and in 2019 they lost via an own goal, via deflection, really, and I still thought they should have won that final because they played better than Algeria in 2019. But I think people would have short memory anyway, because Algeria were the champions and nobody remembers the runners-up. Egypt, on the other hand, 7 trophies already. They're looking for a luxurious 8. As I mentioned, the path that they have for the championship and the path they have for the final so far is unbelievably impressive. Physically, mentally, on all aspects, I think Egypt deserves a big round of applause, a big ovation, I would say, for the effort they put out throughout this tournament, playing against sides like Ivory Coast and Morocco and Cameroon and now Senegal back-to-back. Ain't easy, and beating those 3 sides before Senegal is absolutely, miraculous in some ways. I mean, the game against Cameroon, I would say, compared to what people expected, or compared to the sort of predictions or the way that people theorized it to be, I think the game, Egypt basically went without a hitch against Cameroon. They survived Cameroon. They sort of went through to the final with the minor of damages, no injuries, only a yellow card that will see their right back Omar Kamal, I think, will miss the final. They will not play. So obviously Karaskira is going to have to make a change in that side. And definitely, they managed to survive, as I mentioned, without injuries, without major injuries, and on a pitch like they played against Cameroon, on the pitch of Olembe Stadium, I think that's a big plus heading into a final. I mean, I suspect the pitch would be better on Sunday, but genuinely, the injuries might happen on Sunday, and that could affect, you don't know, it could be a long-term injury that would, that do not allow Egypt to have certain players for the World Cup qualifiers in March, and even for some players for their clubs, of course. Al Ahly in particular have loads of players in the national team. They play in the FIFA Club World Cup at the moment, going on in United Arab Emirates. And also, players that will play in Zamalek, for example, Champions League football in Africa as well, and also the couple of players that are professional and in Europe, of course. Mo Salah on the top of that list, and then you have the likes of Trezeguet, Mustafa Mohamed, Omar Marmoush, and the list goes on. For Senegal, they sort of were, I'm not going to say underrated, but they were pretty overlooked in the start, particularly in the group stages. They were not impressive at all. 1 goal in 3 matches, and on penalty as well, and you compare that to the 3 matches they played so far in the knockout stages. It's different. It's obviously different. Even against Cape Verde in the round of 16, they struggled a bit. And as I mentioned back then, you would have thought, what could have happened if Cape Verde had the 11 players on and didn't have 2 players sent off, of course, including a goalkeeper. What would have happened in that game? Would Senegal have scored the 2 goals they scored? Who knows, really? It remains a mystery. But as I mentioned, they started kicking into that extra gear. We know the creativity started flowing. The team starts to click. With Sadio Mane, shouldering the team on his, getting the team on his shoulders and taking the responsibility to create up front and be the leader that they needed to be, and he deserves to be. Idrissa Gana Gueye with the support. Players from the midfield coming with the runs. Cheikhou Kouyaté. And Namphalis Mendy doing a tremendous job. The defense conceding goals, yes, but getting solid, I would say. Throughout the tournament, as it should be, when you have Kalidou Koulibaly in your side playing with you as a defender. So they kick it into that extra gear. And they're finding themselves. You compare 1 goal in the group stages to 8 in the knockout stages. I mean, this is going to be a pretty, I'm not going to say open game. I doubt it. This won't be an open game, definitely. I think Senegal have most of the possession. I think Egypt physically are not able, I'm sure that are not able to play another high-octane game, possessing the ball. So they'll just need to like slow the rhythm down for Senegal. I really doubt that the midfield of Egypt will be contending with that of Senegal, or the defense of Egypt will be contending with the speed and pace that Senegal have in their attack across the board. Ismail Assar getting fit, scoring in the quarterfinals, and being ready in the semi-finals. He could be a big weapon, considering that he was injured for the first 4 games of the tournament. It would be a pretty, I'm not going to say one-sided, but I reckon there's a certain flow that would be that game. Senegal try to play fast and furious, trying to capitalize on Egypt, playing those 3 games before, all the way to extra time and to penalties. So they will try and capitalize on some physical conditioning that would be bad. Presumably would be bad, we don't know. But of course, it's up to Egypt, and it's up to the coach of Egypt, Carlos Queiroz. It's up to him to try and figure out a way to slow down the rhythm for Senegal and try to extend the life shelf of his players and the lifespan of his players' physical conditioning throughout the game, so that they can control it and they can maybe sting Senegal on a counter-attack or something by Mohamed Salah, who's their main outlet, going up front. It's going to be a big final, obviously, and it will be a big final that everybody's going to watch, because I think, in comparison to, for example, even Cameroon-Senegal, yes, it will be a big billing, but I don't think it will have the same gravitas as Senegal vs Egypt, with easy story. I think of the marketing of Mohamed Salah facing against Sadio Mane, his own teammate at Liverpool. That is going to be very marketable in England, and I think the Liverpool fans will watch that definitely on Sunday after the game, of course, for Liverpool in the FA Cup that's going to be taking place on Sunday. As far as my predictions are concerned, I think I really think that Senegal have a strong chance. Egypt have done enough now. If they win it, I'm not going to be surprised. Actually, it's going to be pretty deserved. But Senegal, by this point, I would say, should be prepped to win this tournament, because I don't think that a generation like this will come to Senegal for the next, 20, 25 years, maybe, at the very least. That is like, 7, 8 African Cup Nations tournament that's going to be happening. So I really doubt that Senegal will have another generation like this in the near future. So that is probably, I'm not going to say the last chance, because the players are still relatively young, but I think it's going to be a major chance to get to that title after, another final, and the second in a row for Aliou Cissé with the national team of Senegal. He's going to be really unlucky, man, if he misses out on yet another trophy. I think Senegal would win the trophy. All by respect to Egypt, I think Senegal will win the trophy. It will be a tight game. It will be a very close goal, but I reckon Senegal would win it by the odd goal, maybe, or by a 2-0 result. Even so, hopefully it will be an enjoyable final. I think it will, and of course we'll wait and see on Sunday what happens as well. As far as the other unimportant game between Cameroon and Burkina Faso, I'm not going to even care to talk about it, because it doesn't matter to me, and Cameroon doesn't matter to anyone at the moment, when they were eliminated from the semi-final. Hopefully we will get after that final, we will do an episode on, I'm going to do an episode on Monday. We'll try and recap the whole tournament. We'll try and get the biggest points of this tournament, on the pitch and off the pitch as well. Hopefully we'll see what happens on Sunday. Before we talk about the Serie A in the Italian football, let's give some quick shout-outs to results from yesterday, of course, and we start with the Club World Cup, as Al Jazeera opened that tournament with 4-1 win over AS Pirai, of course, the AS Pirai, who are the Oceanian champions from Tahiti. Defeated them 4-1. Of course, they kick off the FIFA Club World Cup in United Arab Emirates. Of course, Al Ahly will meet Monterrey on Saturday, of course, and the winner of that game will meet Palmeiras, South American champions, in the semi-final, of course, and the winner from the other game is going to be between Al Jazeera and Al Hilal, of course, the champions of Asia, and the winner of that game is going to meet Chelsea, the European champions, of course. In the Copa del Rey, Real Sociedad lost to Real Betis 4-0. Of course, it's another loss for Real Sociedad against Betis, of course, after the recent one that they had in the league just about, I think, a month and a half ago with the same result, which means that Real Betis qualified to the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey after Valencia, of course, qualified there, and Rayo Vallecano as well, and they're joined by Athletic Club, who managed to defeat Real Madrid. It was 1-0 loss. It was Alex Berenguer in the 89th minute who scored the winner for Athletic Club. From all accounts, of course, I couldn't watch the game because of the African Cup of Nations final, and from all accounts, it was a pretty bad game for Real Madrid, obviously with no Benzema available. He was out injured for that game, which will be a big worry ahead of a big Champions League game against PSG, and they were eliminated off the Copa del Rey. As you mentioned, it will be in the semi-final. It will be Rayo Vallecano versus Real Betis and Valencia versus Athletic Club. Of course, no Real Madrid and no Barcelona in that tournament. Now we move on properly now to the Serie A, of course, and the round 23 from Serie A that will be played, of course, this weekend, around 24. Sorry, Serie A will be played this weekend and will kick off on Saturday with Roma versus Genoa, of course, and Inter versus Milan, Fiorentina versus Lazio as well. Atalanta Cagliari on Sunday, Bologna Empoli, Sampdoria Sassuolo, Venezia versus Napoli, Udinese Torino, Juve host Hellas Verona, and on Monday it is Salernitana versus Spezia. And obviously, without a doubt, all the focus would go to the San Siro, the Giuseppe Meazza in this case, as Inter Milan host AC Milan in a direct, top of the table battle. 4 points separate the two sides. Inter Milan with the game in hand, of course. They didn't play against Bologna. AC Milan 4 points behind them, looking to keep the momentum going, of course, and try and keep the catching up, and maybe even close that gap down to 1 point behind Inter Milan at the top of the table. The last time these two sides met, it was a draw, which was, I'm not going to say disappointing, but I think for Milan, who were the hosts, and I think, frankly, were on the better, side of the spectrum back then. Since then, of course, they went out of the Champions League, they lost loads of players, things sort of changed in a way. But definitely, this game is a really important one for both sides. Of course, for Inter Milan, they need to break away from Milan as much as possible from their opponents and try and get closer to winning that title and to escape the potential of losing points and dropping points. I think the best result for both sides may be a draw, but I think both sides obviously will be looking for the win for different reasons. The general, way the season was going for Inter Milan, I think, as far as their record is concerned, they have some pretty great, tallies. They're the strongest attack, second strongest defense. They won 16 games, only lost once, of course, and they definitely feel like a side that is clogging really well under Simone Inzaghi, who there was worries, of course, that he couldn't be adapting, maybe that Inter is a bigger job than him, but I think those doubts were buried pretty much into the ground as soon as he started the campaign and started getting up those wins and racking up those wins with Inter Milan. And as I mentioned, feel like a very, very well-clogged machine. They added some good players in the transfer windows, the last transfer windows in the summer, and also this past window, they got Robin Gosens from Atalanta, a big addition from them. So it will be, I would say, impossible or unfathomable, to say the least, to see Inter Milan, lose the title to one of their rivals, or one of the teams behind them, Napoli and Milan. I think Atalanta are slowly getting away from the race, 10 points behind. They play against Cagliari, although it's a good game, an opportunity maybe to get some ground on the two above them. Napoli play Venezia away, should be a win for Napoli, in my opinion. Inter Milan, as I mentioned, they started, getting some serious rhythm under Simone Inzaghi after a bit of a worrisome start. People, were still figuring out their style. It was more of Conte's 3-5-2, but I think with more effectiveness up front, with more workmanlike, midfield, of course. The midfield trio of Barella, Çalhanoğlu, and Brozovic is one of the most prolific trios in the midfield in the world at the moment. Obviously, Çalhanoğlu moving from the right side the blue side and being considered a traitor, and the story behind it. I mean, it makes for a wonderful viewing, really, and I think it made for a wonderful viewing in the first Milan derby when Çalhanoğlu was the one scoring the goal for Inter Milan in that game. Again, as I mentioned, much difference happened between then and now. I think Inter are in a much better place. They're in much better form. I'm not going to say Milan are in a bad form, but they look like they're on a pretty wobbly feet. The draw against Juventus, the shock loss against Spezia were the latest results that they had in Serie A. So it's very likely that they will lose another game, or they will draw at least a game against Milan. But who knows? They can surprise everybody and win. Considering they have a decent squad, and Stefano Pioli is doing a tremendous job, I think, with the, let's say, the limitations, to be fair, because Milan didn't make loads of signing in the transfer window. They only have signed Mike Mignon and a couple other of players. They're not big names per se, or names that would bolster the squad. The squad that was getting thin as paper, really, as the season went on for Inter Milan, for Milan, of course. As I mentioned, against opponents like Inter, who know what to do, who are basically on autopilot in the Serie A at the moment. They know how to get results almost automatically without having any problems elsewhere. It's definitely a big motivation, I think, for Milan to try and sneak up with some win against Inter, and it will be, again, a tough game. It will be it's a derby. It's a game that always promises intensity and promises great football, and the winner, I think, of this game is going to change the equation as far as the top table is concerned. If it is Milan, they will get closer, 1 point. You don't know what can happen in the rest of the season from now until the end of the season, potentially late May. There's Napoli as well at second. As I mentioned, they play Venezia. It's an easy game, or should be an easy game for them, and we don't know if Atalanta will get even close to those top three at the table or not. Elsewhere on the league, as I mentioned, Roma played Genoa. This should be another good result for Mourinho, who started up racking some wins with Roma. They started getting some good results and some very impressive performances, I would say, for Roma as of late, after a couple of predictable losses, I would say, against Milan and Juventus. They defeated Atalanta, which is really, really good. Late in December, the win against Cagliari, the winning in Copa Italia, the 4-2, very impressive result against Empoli, where they scored 4 in the first half and all of that. So it will be really good to see how Roma will progress more under Mourinho. Will they get to those European spots? They're pretty close. The Champions League spots, of course. I think the 4th spot will be the one for contention between these sides, Juventus, Roma, and there's Lazio, of course, in that equation, who play Fiorentina away from home, which should be tough, and will be even tougher for Fiorentina after losing Dusan Vlahovic to Juventus. I mean, I wonder how the next game between Fiorentina and Juve would feel like. Atalanta would face Cagliari, as I mentioned, an easy game that probably should be winnable for them, and just to round it up, I'm really hopeful that that Atalanta return. Like a personal note for me, I'm really hopeful that Atalanta close the gap and get closer. I want to see them compete for that trophy, because I feel like they deserve to be close to the Serie A title race. That's it for this episode. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of it, subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, enable notifications for all the updates, listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform, and follow us on social media. Usernames are on the screen and the links in the description. I was with HD of the PSP, and until tomorrow's recap of the day, I will be talking to you soon. Goodbye and take care. Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.